Guatemala, follow me now. This a VTA, we da figure. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me, my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago, agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a VTA, we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a VTA, we da fear.
Bragging about it from behind the zinc fence. Sweet Belize and sweeter Southside Belize City. I am the producer and host of Sunday Review. The tag is Making Sense of the News. And our co-host since January 25 is Revolutionary from Trinidad and Tobago, Brother Mutota. And our guest today is Brother Sam Anderson, Revolutionary as well from out of the United States, the East Coast. Good morning, Brother Akka. Good morning, Brother Sam.
Good morning, Sister YaYa. Good morning to our guest, Brother Sam Anderson, and good morning to our listening audience. It's a pleasure once again to be on Sunday Review. But Sister YaYa, you mentioned Sunday Review since 2025. I didn't plan to be on for the entire 2025. This was a very long time. I was supposed to be on for 6 months. But when you said it, I'm like, this is a long time. Don't ever give me, but it's so much of my time. But anyway, it's good to be on Sunday Review.
It's true, Brother Echo, and we appreciate your energy, time, vibration for as long as you could be with us. Big thanks for the sacrifice you've made and continue for me. Brother Sam Anderson, it's an absolute joy to have you on Sunday Review. Better Brother Sam telling you who he than for me try telling you who that Brother Sam, because there are not enough words. Brother Sam, tell us who you, whatever you comfortable sharing with us, who you, and we have him here today. Well, I know the European people, they recognize June 21st as Father's Day. And I couldn't think of nobody better to talk about manhood and fatherhood from an African conscious brother experience. Brother Sam, tell me who you.
Here in Brooklyn with the provider of the internet service. Yes, I'm a native of Brooklyn, New York, particularly Bed-Stuy. Been around the planet 82 years and started in our Black Liberation movement in the early 60s, 1960s. Initially on campus at Lincoln University, and a member of, at that point, the NAACP, but shortly realized how limited they were, and a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and became active on the campus on a number of things happening. And eventually majored in mathematics and became a math professor, as well as stayed active in the Black Liberation Movement, dabbled within the Black Arts Movement, associated with Amiri Baraka, Larry Neal, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni. Nikki and I were at one point edited together of on a journal called Black Dialogue. And also helping to establish over the years a number of edited books that deal with Black folk, and also working in academia and trying to develop Black study programs, and particularly bring science and technology into the study, into Black studies, which was very, very difficult uphill battle with my colleagues. But that, as well as being part of the anti-apartheid movement in the United States, the African Liberation Committee, African Liberation Support Committee, and work with a number of brothers and sisters who were classmates at Lincoln who wound up becoming important people in the Southern African liberation struggle. One of them being the poet, national poet of South Africa, the poet laureate of South Africa, Kerapesi Kozatsili, who started his poetry journey um, with, we encourage him to poetry. We're good friends for the years. So that, as well as doing solidarity work around Cuba and with my wife, Rosemary Mealy, we've raised a family. And that's another level of responsibility in terms of when you talk about so-called Father's Day, raising a family and being politically active is to me a big challenge. And every day is something, especially when the child is at a younger age and you're trying to guide them down a path of consciousness when they're bombarded with all this other junk that capitalism and racism throws at them. So we were successful in raising two men, and they are conscious on their own and doing the right that, as well as what we writing a book called The Black Holocaust for Beginners. Prior to that, I also worked on a book with a French physicist who's no longer with us, Maurice Bazin, who was a brilliant physicist who was the third person at the seat of Einstein at Princeton. And the Vietnam War politicized him. We met in that milieu of the anti-war period, and we felt that it was important in the 1970s to have a book that would show the foundational work of science and technology coming out of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Nobody in the West wanted to do the book um, um, except for a newly formed house in Portugal, and it was called Livros Horizonte. And so they published a two-volume work, and in my head at that point, I said to Maurice, I said, "This is Portuguese. A lot of folk are not going to be able to get access to it." And he reminded me. He said, "Brazil has the largest population of people of African descent outside of Africa, and they speak Portuguese." Then you got Angola, and I said, "Oh yeah, you're right." Guinea-Bissau, I said, you're right. Okay, yes, we're good to go. So we were able to get those books out, but we were not able to get a English language publisher for the book. But it sold very well in those areas. So that's in a nutshell, brief. I know I'm missing some things in my history. At one point, I wore was a printer. I learned printing by how would you say, on the job training. I had to call up a printer. Basically, how do you start a printing machine and all that. But it was great. It was a small black business in Harlem that we felt that it was service that we should provide to our community. And this is before the and the internet, making something tactile, like a piece of paper folded into a little pamphlet, was important and was necessary. And out of that printing, we also developed posters, political posters, black political posters, and little pamphlets that we reproduced. For example, W.E.B. Du Bois had a little pamphlet in the 1930s that he wrote specifically for black folk that about why Africa is important, and we reprinted that, and a number of other pamphlets. Another important pamphlet we did was on South Africa, Black America, Same Struggle, Same Fight by Bill Sales, who also wrote on Malcolm X, and the organization Afro-American Unity. And so there's a lot of history that one covers as a person who has traveled the sun 82 times, and I'll just stop.
Big thanks, Brother Sam. It's truly an honor to have you on Sunday Review and have someone share with us at this time in particular your intentional commitment to the liberation of African people at great sacrifice and with your life partner, Sister Rosemary Mealy. I just meet they that I organized the delegation to Cuba end of December 2025, 2026. And they're definitely my lifelong people. But since today is the day that's being recognized as a day to honor fathers and people who have fathered children that they didn't biologically um, birth or conceptualize, not conceptualize, participate in their conception, I
Mhm.
definitely want to take time to recognize African fathers in particular who have crossed over into the other realm, the ones who are still with us and the ones who are yet to be born. And so, coming from that perspective, I'll ask Brother Sam and then I'll ask Brother Akko, how has your acceptance of what African manhood is evolved over the years? Brother Sam and then Brother Akko. How has your definition, idea, realization of what African manhood is evolved over the years?
Yes, it has evolved. I had initially your Eurocentric Christian man kind of readers, as I would say, Reader's Digest, which is a conservative, was a conservative magazine in the U.S. Viewpoint, and and it did not allow for any kind of shades of black in it. And the movement, joining the movement as a young man, and interacting with elders who are also activists and so forth, and seeing their families in one way, shape, or form supporting their efforts, began to open up my view of what black manhood is all about. And it has constantly evolved. And like you said, taking up Rosemary's son, which was not my son, he became very much my son over time, from the time he was like 11 or 12 years old until now. And that's many years, right? He's almost 60 now or so. So, that was a responsibility. It's initially difficult in the beginning, but then it worked out to be very useful, very productive. The other factor is that you had in our families, okay, we had like my father and my cousins' fathers, they went through experiences that did not that I did not go through. Their primary experiences were based on growing up in the time when they were being used as cannon fodder in World War II. My father was a military man for 20 some odd years. And he finally gave up the ghost. He said to me, "Not one more day in this racist army." even though they were trying to promote him to be a general, he said no, and they just thought he was like crazy. But it worked out to be very, very good for him and the family. Just take your stand to be principled in an unprincipled organization like the Imperial Army of the United States is another sign of a version of black manhood, right? There's so many things that will come at you and make you act like the imperialists in the military, and you had to find ways of resisting that. And my father gave me set the example. We were stationed, well, he was stationed in Panama, for example, from 1956 to 59, and there was, as you know, there was constant turmoil between the Panamanian nationalist forces and the U.S. Who had control over the Canal Zone, and we and at the same time it was desegregation within the United States on a whole. And so since the Canal Zone was part of the United States, it was quote unquote desegregated. So what he would do, he would take me to the canal, to the locks, and we would walk the locks and drink out of the white fountain because they still had the white and the silver and gold fountains there, for the whites and for the black, and defy anybody to come up to us, right? To say no, you can't do that. And then we would go into the train station in Cologne, and the train station was also segregated. It still said white with white folks seat, comfortable seats and so forth. And the colored were, or non-white because they had Panamanian, was benches and really bad. And so we would just sit in the white area and there's nothing they can do about it, right? There was nothing they can do about it. When the government said, when the U.S. government said you should not go into Cologne or into Cristobal or into Panama City because there was a rebellion, people demonstrating and stuff like that, we would go. We put on our guayabera and just go and see what's going on. So that was, showing me that you, as a black man, you can manipulate, you can work this system, work this out. You have to be careful, but you got to work that out. But the contradiction is that he did not like me being politically involved inside the United States. Okay, that was contradiction, and it really got to him because the FBI visited him about asking about me, right? And that really, it's like, so I was disowned for a few years, and but we came back, and, best of friends, so to speak. After he realized that our political lives had merged again, right? We're given all the things that has happened and so forth, and he realized that I was on the path that he set for me. So yes, that part of manhood and fatherhood is important. The other is meeting um, gay black men who raise children, but either as single gay men or as gay men in other relations. And they were very conscious of who they were as black men raising children, girls and boys, and realizing that the vast majority of the children that they may interact with would be heterosexual and not homosexual, and they would have to find ways of helping them along those lines and so forth and so on. So that was another interesting factor that came on. for me, fortunately being in New York City and being able to have those kinds of interactions. Um, the the other factor is having respect for your partner to do the work that she needed to do. And it was a point where Rosemary had a political obligation to spend time in Cuba. And that meant that we were separated for maybe 3 years or so. Hey, raise kids, paid, those kind of things while she's off doing the necessary political work. So that required discipline and political understanding on my behalf, which um, became fairly easy for me because of our work in the movement by that time of maybe 15 years or so worth of work in the movement. So yeah, so let me just stop there and maybe some questions, something else about.
Big thanks, Brother Sam. We have another 9 minutes. So I'll ask Brother Akko if he has comments on what you said. And then when we come back after the break, Brother Akko can respond to the question about manhood. And then for the next 60 minutes, I hear my mouth atal, because I want to create the space for two Black men have one reasoning about Black manhood and fatherhood. So, Brother Akko, what are your comments and thoughts about what Brother Sam has shared so far?
Well, the first thing I wanted to ask him about is unrelated to the subject. It's about being born in Bed-Stuy, which is a very important community and still is. And I remember as a child, some of the first Caribbean immigrants in the 60s who went up to the US, it seemed as almost every letter that came from Bed-Stuy, because that's where the Caribbean community would go to. But we didn't know it was not Bed-Stuy. So, right? So being born in Bed-Stuy, I didn't know he was born in Bed-Stuy. So it struck me because of how close the Caribbean community and eventually the Bed-Stuy became, and it's called Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Yes.
Right. So So people use Bed-Stuy for short. But when I came to New York for the first time in the 1980s, I spent a short time in Queens because some of them moved from Bed-Stuy to Queens as they evolved economically and so on. But then the second time I came back, and each time after I came back in the 80s into the 90s, I stayed in Bed-Stuy. Okay. So I wanted him to sort of tell us a bit about Bed-Stuy because that was a key area for the Caribbean community. Outside of Harlem, it's possibly the most significant African-centered community in the New York area, and if not so, the most important community for Caribbean people in the U.S. So I want you to talk about that.
Okay, we have 7 minutes, Brother Sam.
My family is a blended family. That is to say, my father is from North Carolina. On my mother's side is Jamaica and Barbados. And my mother's father was a devout Garveyite. And so for him, um, a man, his idea that his daughters, he had 5 daughters. His daughters are going to marry a Black man, no matter where that Black man comes from. He's African. And so this was an understanding, I think, as within the Bedford-Stuyvesant community, because you had this convergence, as Otto says, of the folk from the Caribbean and folk from the U.S. converging, living together, growing up together, going to school together, and so forth. And it was a development where you had families that became extended families, where for a number of years growing up as a child, I thought this person we call uncle was an uncle, but he wasn't. he was he was part of an extended family kind of thing, and that was what held that community together. What tore the community apart in the first wave was this attraction to going out and getting a house with picket fences and so forth, which you couldn't do in Brooklyn because that's where white folks were living in Flatbush and so forth. So they were enticed to go out to Queens and then later enticed to go out to Long Island and New Jersey, upstate New York and Westchester County as a form of moving up the ladder, becoming more of a middle class black person. But there were people who stayed in Bed-Stuy and kept the tradition going. The community is the birthplace of the community control of public schools, the whole community control movement, which was a major movement to have black people, black families be directly involved in the child's educational development and not have whites imposing their view of what we should know, who we are, and what we should know. It was in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and one of the major ministers was Reverend Galamison, and we attended his church in Bed-Stuy, and he was a very outspoken black education advocate there. And then it spread from basically from Bed-Stuy out into the Ocean Hill, Brownsville community and into Harlem and the Lower East Side of New York City for those struggles. So Bed-Stuy played a very important role on that level. Artists of various kinds, black artists of various kinds, come out of Bedford-Stuyvesant. You have the late Tom Feelings, an artist, come out of there, out of Bed-Stuy. You had Billie Holiday, living jazz musicians. Oh, please, I don't want to go on a lie. You had jazz musicians basically living and growing up in Bedford-Stuyvesant. It was a vibrant, multinational black community that set not only the cultural tone in Black America, but the political tone, given the number of political forces that have come out of Bed-Stuy. And it had and the young people had an attitude. When we growing up, we're from Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy.
And people understood that. You don't mess with them.
Yeah. But the East with the Armory, that was in Bed-Stuy
Yes.
too.
Yes. Yes.
With YaYa.
Yeah. YaYa was a very important educator, activist, cultural developer, absolutely. Businessman, definitely. Yeah.
Big
Yeah,
thanks, both of you.
yeah.
Sorry about that, Brother Sam. You can finish your
Yeah.
thought.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much for this first half. I will leave it to Brother Akko for come with the twist and a good twist in their conversations. Big thanks, Brother Akko. When we come back, Brother Akko want to respond to the question about how his idea, understanding of manhood from a Black conscious man perspective evolved or developed over the years. And then I want pretty just much be quiet, just reminding of the time constraints. I left them too, but I'll make them have this reasoning. I'm gonna go heal up for the people and share this link with a live stream on XTV, Belize, YouTube, and Facebook. You can also go to your local XTV channel, and we're live streaming on Creme Radio. This is the one conversation we want to go back and revisit and share with others. So we have Brother Sam Anderson, revolutionary from the United States, and Brother Mutota, revolutionary from Trinidad and Tobago. And I don't use that word, make I tell you, people might use that word loosely, but when I use it, that the authentic meaning of what that word means, you see them two brother, it's a great sacrifice of themselves, their families, and the one tradition that has been passed on from our African ancestors and ancestors to we where they live now and our unborn African sisters and brothers. So we have one duty for share and teach within community holistically. Break time.
We have 15 communities today present, which comprises of the Cayo, Stancrick and Toledo districts. We have water boards and village councils. The village councils are receiving maintenance equipment in the name of riding mower or weed eaters. Simultaneously, we're distributing water meters for expansion purposes, and also what that does, it helps water boards to become self-sustainable through proper water management, increase of revenue, and then they would be able to make investment back in their respective communities. Also, we have culverts, pipes, fittings for expansion purposes, and water meters.
These resources are more than just equipment. They represent a commitment to rural development, community pride, and the continued partnership between government and local authorities.
This is about service to our people.
Rural communities must also benefit.
Most of you that are here, if not everyone, has volunteer services to assist us to complement that humanitarian assistance that we are giving to our people. And without your help, we won't be able to do much.
We want to build capacity. We want to build sustainability in your communities. That's important. We will help those who want to help themselves.
Look here, your kitchen light there and you been in the kitchen.
Mama going back in there right now.
And the coffee maker?
Just to try keep the coffee warm for later.
Where do you know?
I'll try to think more if you eat.
You know the more you open or close the fridge, it takes longer for the food cool. For a hot day like today, it burns more energy. You the charge your phone right now?
No.
Plug it out then. You really only wash 2 socks and 1 shirt? You don't know what small load burn the same amount of electricity as large loads?
But this is my favorite shirt.
You have to be more energy efficient. Use large loads. This AC they blow hard. You know, if you keep the temperature at 25 degrees Celsius or higher, you burn less energy and you also keep the place cool. And for a nice day like today, turn off the AC, open up the house and make some fresh breeze come in.
You know what? I think I get it now. As consumers, we need to be more energy efficient and practice energy conservation.
The biggest football event in the world is finally here, and Smart is giving you the chance to play and win. Before every match starts, predict who will win. The more predictions you make, the more chances you have to win. Get 1 point towards your total when you guess the winning team. Predict the exact score and earn up to 4 points. The top scorer at the conclusion of the World Cup wins the grand prize of $2,500 in cash. That's not all. Players get a chance to win weekly prizes. Plus, our quarter-final winner gets a watch party package. Play directly in the Smart app for just 50 cents per entry. Prediction starts June 1st to July 18, 2026. Don't just watch the World Cup. Play along and win with Smart. Smart, bringing people together.
At Atlantic Bank, your convenience is our priority. Our contact center is designed to enhance your banking experience. With a wide range of customer service options, you save time and effort. You can easily call in to block or unblock your debit and credit cards, perform account inquiries, and access detailed card information. Whether you need assistance with online banking, merchant support, or general inquiries, our team is ready to help. For added convenience, if all operators are busy, you can leave your number and an operator will return your call as soon as possible to ensure you receive the support you need. Depending on your transaction type, we may need to verify your identity through a set of security questions. And remember, Atlantic Bank will never request your username or password for Atlantic Online via phone call, text, or email, ensuring your personal information remains safe and secure. Our support team is available Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in both English and Spanish. Simply dial 223-1212. This is a dedicated line for our contact center. Atlantic Bank is committed to providing you with exceptional service and the tools you need to manage your finances conveniently and securely. Take full advantage of our easy-to-use contact center services today.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
At Habet and Brothers Habet, celebrate your super handy dad with gifts he'll actually use and enjoy super savings all June. Like 15% off all power tools and Stanley hand tools, 20% off Vento PVC windows, 20% off Ascot porcelain tiles and 30% off Piso Forte ceramic tiles, and 40% off Sunlight windows and doors. Plus, stop in at Brothers Habet every Saturday for our veranda clearance blowout. And for every $50 you spend, get a chance to win a power tool every Saturday. Visit Habet and Brothers Habet today and give Dad something worthy of his super handiness. Happy Father's Day to all super handy dads.
Come from the Billy City area, 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago, agreement by the slave master, talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots, all people who love them country bad love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. This is the we we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This is the we the fear.
The question was, how has your idea, understanding of what African manhood is, has evolved over the years that you have lived?
So, Sister YaYa, I would begin with a quote from Hakeem Adubuti, with a very interesting book some years ago, which doesn't get a lot of play, called From Plant to Planet. In my opinion, it was one of the better books that he wrote. And one of the things, one of the quotes that I read from that book was that geniuses are not born, they are made. And the point he was making was that there's an institutional and a cultural process that makes geniuses. People like to say, oh, he was born a genius. And Madubuti's argument was that geniuses are not born, they are made. The same thing with manhood, in my opinion. You are born a male, but manhood is a process in which you acquire certain attributes, which you acquire certain habits, and then from being born a male, you become a man through certain kind of processes. Unfortunately, as people who have been moved away from our culture, we have lost a lot of the cultural processes that made us into the kind of men we should be. And what has happened is that we have embraced Eurocentric notions of manhood, which is very toxic and very patriarchal. In another interesting book by Dr. Bunsheki Fukiao, the book is called Kindezi, The Congo Art of Babysitting, in which he outlined a sort of methodology of how the traditional Congolese people view parenting. And I think this is the critical point here. We cannot speak about manhood or womanhood without understanding the cultural framework, and two, the concept of parenting that comes from that cultural framework. And for a lot of us, these things have been lost. So we have very immature, very what I call colonial concepts of what this thing called manhood is all about. Very much rooted in patriarchy. And what has emerged, especially as modern capitalism has evolved, is something called hypermasculinity. And this is what is driving people to wage wars. This is what is driving violence and a whole host of other things. So from my point of view, there can be no concept of manhood without a cultural framework. You know, I remember when I was in the revolutionary movement, the organization in Trinidad, we initiated something called the Cultural Trust. And it was a way to Africanize us, to give us a concept of who we were as humans. And also that, how we should behave as men, you know? And even the ceremonies that, the traditional ceremonies that we were involved in fact, one of the ceremonies, the naming day ceremony, is a very interesting thing. When you name the child, you know, you issue a call to the mother and you say, conduct yourself in such a way that, you know, you are respected there, right? But for the man, they say, conduct yourself in such a way that all children may call you father. You become an example. So for me, the most simplistic definition of manhood is to be an example in the highest sense of the word, using our own cultural frameworks, using and understanding the politics. You know, I remember very clearly, this sister, Michelle Wallace, wrote a book called Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman. So Michelle Wallace came under a lot of attack from brothers because they were like, oh, she dogging men and all of this kind of thing. So I wanted to know more, and I read the book. And for me, a lot of what she was saying made sense. There was a lot of, some things she didn't agree with, but you know, she was speaking about this patriarchal approach to manhood. And I learned a lot. In fact, I would tell people it was my first exposure to what I call feminism. Why the feminist perspective? And so for me, manhood is a very broad and all-encompassing concept that must be rooted in cultural frameworks, in political frameworks, in spiritual frameworks, right? And there is no, as I began by quoting Hakim Alibuti, you are born a male, but manhood is a process of transition to become what you should be. And the last point I want to make about that, which I may have used, quoted, there was an article, I think, in one of the newspapers in the US, where it was about, I think, Life magazine, in its 100 years at the time, never did a piece on Africa. And they decided to feature Africa. And one of the things they spoke about was an initiation ceremony. And this is why I said the difference between male and man. In the traditional African sense, you move from being a male to manhood through initiation processes, and not just one, but there were several as you grow older. And so there was this group of young men who were being initiated, and one of them was blind. And so the reporter who was covering the story said to the elder, well, look, this guy is blind, and the kind of task you are giving him, you know, this is not, basically not fair. And the elder said, blindness must not be a handicap. He has to develop his other senses. And to me, that was the essence of being initiated into manhood. You have to develop every sense that you have as a human being, as a male first, and then as a human being. And so there is no understanding of manhood without, to me, a cultural reference and a cultural framework.
Big thanks for that response, Brother Akka. Now, I want to leave the space for two conscious Black men to have a reasoning about manhood and fatherhood, as if the camera was not on. Bonus space.
I just want to mention, you mentioned Michelle Wallace. She was a mentee of mine, sort of. She lived a block away from me. Her mother, by the way, is Faith Ringgold.
Yeah, I know. I met her mother, Faith Ringgold, more than once, actually.
Powerful sister,
Powerful
boy.
sister. She came to my store.
A beautiful artist, great artist,
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
But anyway, Michelle at that point, I was teaching at City College um, in the first inception of the Black Studies program at City. And, she would come by and we would talk about this whole thing that you just talked about, the male femaleness. She was just developing this whole thing. And I didn't realize that, I'm working with her and then she's doing a book until the book came out. I said, oh, okay. That's what, because I never asked her, I just thought she was this, intellectually developing and wanted to know more and so forth, or who to see, who to talk to, and so on. But, it was, I was happy that, our conversations played a positive role within that book, Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman.
Una two, go ahead and talk. We just all listen to Una two talk. You got a mic, Brother Akka, Brother Sam, Breddah, on a reason.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brother Akka, Brother Sam. Una could just reason with each other.
Yeah.
Well, So, so he spoke about her mother, Faith Ringgold, which is very, very. I met her, fantastic human being. But back to the subject of manhood and so on. And we live in a capitalist society, and capitalism and imperialism has certain kind of cultural patterns or shapes culture in a certain way.
Yeah.
And one of the sort I would call the derivatives of this version of manhood is paternalism and patriarchy. Right. And unfortunately, because we are born into this capitalist society, we have imbibed some of these things as men. The domineering approach, the dictatorial approach, and the thing about manhood, as it is defined by Western capitalism, is that it doesn't lend itself to what you may call democratic tendencies. It's it imposes itself as rule, as law. And a lot of us have been influenced by that kind of construct. And so to really, in my opinion, understand where we are, we have to deconstruct what I consider modern day manhood and reconstruct a revolutionary concept of what it is. And in that reconstruction, we will also be reconstructing things like fatherhood. Because there is I'll give you, while I quoted Kindezi. In Kindezi, Fukuyama sort of was very critical of the babysitting concept in the US, right? He said, how are you going to take a little 15-year-old who's undeveloped to babysit a child, an emerging mind? And he said, in the Congo, which is what he's analyzing, he said babysitting was done by elders, experienced people. And he said part of the tradition of this babysitting was the elders would take the child for walks. And so they learn all the plants, the herbal plants that were good for your health, the plants that were poisonous, the animals that could harm you, and so on, the poisonous snakes and so on. So he said this idea of, and babysitting is part of parenting, which is what people don't understand. You see? And parenting is what shapes the kind of men and women we have.
Yeah.
So Fukuyama says, look, to go and give a 14 or 30 or 10-year-old to babysit, right? You are beginning wrong. And so this is why I began by speaking of the cultural context of manhood. We have to reclaim a cultural framework for manhood. Right. And that means deconstructing every aspect of our lives, right? We were raised, how we see the world, and so on and so forth. Okay?
Yeah.
Like a couple of days ago, someone was sharing a story with me about a very wealthy man in Trinidad. And he has lots of land, but he said his children is not interested in the land. They live in the US and so on. And he said, I grew up 10 in a two-room house. And I never wanted them to have that experience. And the person said to him, yes, but you should have taught them the value of what you learned to 10 in a two-room. Because there's a politics and a tolerance and an understanding, right, that you must have when you live in a small space as people. And so these values, and he said, yeah, I never taught them that. So now they are totally disconnected from his upbringing and from the land. And that is the process of African people. We are disconnected from our concepts of manhood, womanhood, raising children, and we are imitating Eurocentric norms. And so here we have this toxic version of masculinity, of fatherhood, and all of these kinds of things. And so there must be a process in which we deconstruct and reconstruct.
Right. I agree. One of my experiences in terms of manhood around what Brother Akko was saying, at Lincoln University in 1965, we had a conference on where do we go from here. It was a conference in which I helped organize and invited Black revolutionary people to come and speak. Well, Lincoln University is located a few miles from Wilmington, Delaware. In other words, just a short walk to the Mason-Dixon line, the line that invisible line that separated the North from the South. The white folks felt that Lincoln University was too much of a Black radical hotbed because we were involved in the civil rights movement. We sat in and desegregated the theater in Wilmington, the movie theater in Wilmington, Delaware, and now we're talking revolutionary. Here's a Black man who's a communist, who's the main speaker at Lincoln in 1965. So long story short, the Klan said, we're gonna go to the campus to teach them niggas a lesson, okay? And we said we will. The Black student radicals on the campus, only about a dozen of us, said, but we're gonna defend the campus. You all come. We're gonna arm ourselves and defend the campus. And we made this a public announcement on the campus. Fortunately, and this is a contradiction, but fortunately, our president at that time was a white liberal, and he said you had the right to do what you said you wanted to do, right? If it was a Black president, 99% of the Black presidents would have you suspended and so forth. So there was a professor on the campus who you might know, Charles Hamilton, who wrote Black Power
Black Power, Kwame Tourist.
Kwame, yeah. Right?
And also, just Kwame and Nkrumah went to Lincoln University, not so?
Yes. Kwame went, Ezekwe went, yes. And so, he said, Sam, I'm gonna have a lecture in my political science class about manhood, right? I want you to be there. Because I was a math major, I wasn't, a political science major. And, everybody had mad respect for him. And so his room, fortunately, was on the first floor. So it was overflowing. Literally, the window was open and people, at this time, Lincoln was predominantly male. Today, it's predominantly female. But at that time, it was built to be a male institution. And so all these brothers were there, and he lectured. It was the most powerful lecture on Black manhood, what it means to be a Black man in America, a young Black man in America, growing up in this period of 1965, political turmoil, you name it, right, happening all over. It was right after, a month after the Watts Rebellion, um, uh, um, 10 months after the Harlem Rebellion. So it inspired us. That was that whole lecture about the importance of manhood in the political context of struggle, right? That these whites are trying to emasculate us on the campus and Lincoln on the whole. And we have the right to stand up and resist that. Simple, basic thing like that. That was very, very important for us to proceed and defend the campus, which we successfully did. But the whole concept of revolutionary manhood, is something that we need to foster in this present moment, and all that it encompasses, in because that concept is a very broad concept that breaks from the Judeo-Christian patriarchal framework, right? And we just need to develop to try to develop that as much as possible in this moment, because we have a lot of people, particularly in the U.S., a lot of people, a lot of young men who have no concept of who they are as men, as black men, and what have you, and they just take up on whatever is the latest thing that they may see on Instagram or on YouTube and run with that.
Another 5 minutes in this segment, so keep reasoning, brothers.
So there is as I mentioned, there is the toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Which has emerged out of the whole experience of oppression, colonialism, and slavery. Now, in the African American tradition, there's a character that symbolizes that toxic masculinity. You see him a lot in blues songs. Stagger Lee, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Stagger Lee character, right? And there's always because Stagger Lee was a very violent character, right? But Stagger Lee was presented as a kind of embodiment of manhood. And you have to understand this in an oppressive environment. Twisted versions and toxic versions of definitions emerge, right? But there is a parallel figure in the Caribbean community in Trinidad about the Stagger Lee, called the Bajon, right? Who was always fighting, always supposedly defending communities. But these were definitions, and I'm sure in other parts of Jamaica has one too. I forgot the Bloods. I think it's the Bloods they call them in Jamaica, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is these definitions of manhood out of the oppressive conditions that are shaped sometimes our definition of manhood, and that's why I keep saying, there has to be a process of reconstruction.
Right.
Deconstructing and reconstructing. And just to support what Brother Sam said, this is Che Guevara, Socialism and Man. It's a very important document in that Che Guevara recognizes what he called the emergence of the new man or the new person. And he said that has to come through a revolutionary process, that you have to break down the old cultural forms. That's why I keep returning to this thing about the cultural frame. We have to break down these old cultural forms that have shaped us. If you look at, for example, and I hope I'm not, I made a point, we have to break down these forms, but these forms, oppressive forms, and create new ones. But if you look at, for example, how we even marry each other at times, right? In marriage is almost like the person's a commodity. Right. You have to buy the biggest diamond.
Right.
And it's all informed by the capitalist mode.
Yeah.
You have to buy the biggest diamond, the biggest rock. Mm-hmm. So, and then you hear them say, but that's my man and my. So you become possessive. It's just as how capitalism possess a human being and possess. So all of these concepts are intertwined in our relationships and is shaping things that we don't even understand.
Right.
The subtlety of these things that we are doing.
Yeah.
You understand? All of these things we have to deconstruct. You see? To understand why we respond the way we respond.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Language.
Why we have these toxic definitions. And all of these stem from this colonial and oppressive. So what capitalism has done is to commodify everything. So even marriage and relationships are commodified.
Yeah.
You understand? Even and so this is what happens. So once the luster is lost, right, in the relationship, you just discard it like you discard an old piece of plastic or something. This is why in the US there's so much divorce. Okay? Because we have this concept of manhood and womanhood. And
okay.
Again,
We're at the end of this segment, but we'll pick up back after a short break. I just need to share. It's with heavy hearts that I was brought to my attention. About 43 minutes ago, I was posted on XTV Facebook page that a brother who has been very instrumental in impacting the lives of grassroots people, in particular brothers, has transitioned to the spirit world. And that is the Belizean producer, artist, Father Lee. And on behalf of Zinc Fence, we extend our deepest condolences to Father Lee and his immediate and extended family. And we know this is a major blow to many young Black Belizean producers and artists. And this is a shock to the community that will be felt for a very long time. So on behalf of Zinc Fence, we extend our deepest condolences to Father Lee and his immediate and extended family. With that, we'll take a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Condolences to the family.
Benny's is kicking off Father's Day with popping deals for dad. In the month of June, visit a Benny's near you and get store-wide discounts on selected items such as Milwaukee and Axie power tools, Charbroil barbecue grills, car care products, Karcher pressure washers, and much, much more. Make dad happy with popping deals for dad in June, only at Benny's.
Benny's. Oh, Benny's.
Life moves fast. Your connection should keep up. Need more credit? More data? A flex bundle that fits your lifestyle? With Smart Prepaid, they're a prepaid option for every lifestyle and budget, making it easy to stay connected wherever you are. Because with Smart Prepaid, you can connect on your terms. Purchase credit, data, flex bundles, prepaid plans, and all your favorite prepaid services at any Smart agent, Smart showroom, or simply dial *100# key. No stress, no waiting. Just fast, easy, convenient ways to stay connected every day. Smart Prepaid. Connect on your terms.
We have 15 communities today present, which comprises of the Cayo, Stancrick, and Toledo districts. We have water boards and village councils. The village councils are receiving maintenance equipment in the name of riding mower or weed eaters. Simultaneously, we are distributing water meters for expansion purposes, and also what that does, it helps water boards to become self-sustainable through proper water management, increase of revenue, and then they would be able to make investment back in their respective communities. Also, we have culverts, pipes, fittings for expansion purposes, and water meters.
These resources are more than just equipment. They represent a commitment to rural development, community pride, and the continued partnership between government and local authorities.
This is about service to our people.
Rural communities must also benefit
Most of you that are here, if not everyone, has volunteered your services to assist us to complement that humanitarian assistance that we are giving to our people. And without your help, we won't be able to do much.
We want to build capacity. We want to build sustainability in your communities. That's important. We will help those who want to help themselves.
Paperworks Entertainment and SJ Promotion presents the official Belizean Jamaican link-up, the Father's Day edition. It's an all-white day party on Sunday, June 21st at the Belize Airport Authority parking lot, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Featuring the international reggae dancehall singing sensation stage boss, Wayne Wonder. To mash up the stage alongside the General Super G for the first time in Belize, Steely Bashman plus Belize's top DJs. Get your general tickets for $60 and VIP for $150 at Madisco, Stone Music Outlet and VIP Wireless. And lock the date for the official Belizean Jamaican link-up all-white day party on Sunday, June 21st at the Belize Airport Authority parking lot, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Sponsored by...
En Atlantic Bank, tu comodidad es nuestra prioridad. Nuestro centro de contacto está diseñado para mejorar tu experiencia bancaria, con una amplia gama de opciones de servicio al cliente. Ahorras tiempo y esfuerzo. Puedes llamar fácilmente para bloquear o desbloquear tus tarjetas de débito y crédito, realizar consultas de cuentas y acceder a información detallada de tus tarjetas. Ya sea que necesites asistencia con la banca en línea, apoyo para comercios o consultas generales, nuestro equipo está listo para ayudarte. Para mayor comodidad, si todos los operadores están ocupados, puedes dejar tu número y un operador te devolverá la llamada lo antes posible para asegurarse de que recibas el apoyo que necesitas. Para mayor seguridad, es posible que necesitemos verificar tu identidad con un conjunto de preguntas sencillas. Recuerda, Atlantic Bank nunca solicitará tu nombre de tu usuario ni contraseña de Atlantic Online por llamada telefónica, mensaje de texto o correo electrónico, asegurando que tu información personal permanezca segura y protegida. Nuestro equipo de apoyo está disponible de lunes a viernes, de 8 a.m. a 6 p.m., en inglés y en español. Simplemente marca al 223-1212. Esta es la línea dedicada para nuestro centro de contacto. Atlantic Bank se compromete a brindarte un servicio excepcional y las herramientas que necesitas para administrar tus finanzas de manera conveniente y segura. Aprovecha al máximo nuestro servicio del centro de contacto.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Some hands do more than carry. They prepare, they fix, they comfort. They keep a home moving in ways few people notice. And even when the day is done, they are still thinking of home. For the months of May and June, we celebrate the hands that hold the home together, offering you 25% off on tiles, lights, fans, ACs, gardening supplies, and more, both in-store and online. Thank you, moms and dads, from Builders Hardware.
Area 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago, agreement by the slave master, talking about the help on the Belizean dollar because patriots, all people who love them country bad, love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. This is we we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This is we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This is me. maritime area. Long time ago, agreement by the slave master. Talking about
Final segment of Sunday Review with our guest, Brother Sam Anderson, revolutionary from out of the United States, East Coast, and Brother Mutota, who's a co-host revolutionary from Trinidad and Tobago. We have 20 minutes, brothers. So make much of this last 20 minutes as both of you reason about African manhood and fatherhood from conscious men perspective.
You have a question for us?
Oh, yes, I definitely have a
question.
As conscious Black men, how did both of your mindset evolve when it came to African women? Because we would often hear it's challenging to find a Black brother who's conscious to partner, especially as we age and our mindset shifts. So let me hear how your mindset developed when it came to choosing to have relations with African women, whether they were platonic or intimate relationships. So let's hear, brothers, Brother Sam and then Brother Akka. I never expect that question, true?
For me, like I said before, it was growing up in a household where my grandfather was a Garveyite. It's a no-brainer, absolutely no-brainer. Relationships. Growing up in that family, Black women were beautiful. Your mother was beautiful, your aunts, right, your cousins, and so forth. I was the only child, so I didn't have a sibling, and that's what shaped me. In going out into the world as a young man, and also respect. It was not just chasing Black women. It's just having respect. That was you're surrounded by that understanding in the family, in the immediate family and the extended family, that you respect Black women, and you hear somebody disrespect you're obligated to say something about that, right? So that was one thing, and then as late teens, early 20s, you're in the midst of in my age, you're in the midst of the Black arts movement, the Black is Beautiful movement, right? And I met in 1964, maybe. I met Ilambe Brath and his brother, the Braithwaite brothers, they were called then, Cecil and Kwame now.
Yeah.
Kwame, right. Kwame and Ilambe. Met them and saw the AJAS, the African Jazz Art Society organization that they pulled together, the fashion show, the beautiful Black women in Afrocentric outfits and so forth, the jazz and what have you, the skits, the political skits, all of that kind of stuff. And so I approached Ilambe and I said to him, I'm a student at Lincoln, and I think we would be good for you to come with this program to Lincoln. And he said, great, because he really wanted to do something out of the HBCU, right? And it was like no contacts. People just saw him and his brother doing these crazy Black things, right? So long story short, he gave us promotional material, photographs that Kwame took of sisters, and we put them up in front of the cafeteria because everybody had to line up and go into the cafeteria. And it was at that point that I realized the internalized self-hate that young Black men had towards Black women. Those who were born in the U.S., I would say. And Lincoln was a small college at that time, maybe 475, mainly men. We had young men from the Caribbean and young men from various parts of Africa. Those men from Africa, when they saw those sisters' photos, they said, "Oh wow, she looks like she's from so and so. She's beautiful. She looks like she's from," identifying the African woman's geographical location. And it's similarly with some of the brothers who came from the Caribbean. But most, in the very beginning, most of them laughed or just didn't even look at the pictures, right? They didn't, the pictures of their beautiful photographs, portraits, and so forth. They didn't look at them. And the fortunate thing that we did, we put them up. We put them up in, I believe it was in November, and the activity was going to happen in January. So those pictures are up every day, right? And you saw the transformation of young men who poo-pooed, who saw saw these sisters as ugly, transformation of them having to see the beauty, because they couldn't help but if you try to ignore it, you couldn't, because the photos were so striking. And so by the time the event happened, everybody came out, and everybody afterwards, every brother felt that these women were beautiful. They were, they had afros. That was the thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. They had afros in 1964, 65. That was a phenomenal thing in the United States, to have black women with natural hair and being portrayed as beautiful. And after the activity, the young black men on the campus began to realize, they began to see the beauty in black women. But it was an effort. It wasn't easy. It was an effort. It was, we had conversations and so forth. We had this international Pan-African conversation about young black men from Ghana talking to the young black man from Alabama about black women and their beauty. So that was another turning point for me in seeing how much work we have to do in our relationships between men and women, young men and young women within Black America. And so it was something that I kept with me, and I tried to in our political work make that kind of connection happen, is have the ability of black men to see the beauty of black women.
Big thanks, Brother Sam. Brother Akko?
What was the question again, Sister? Just for clarity. You're muted. You're muted.
The question was, how has your concept, relationship, ideas of as a conscious black man, as he evolved over the years, how has that impacted your relationship, whether platonic or intimately, with black women?
So I grew up in a household with my grandmother. And my grandmother was a very devout woman. Not so much in the religious sense of the word, because she never went to church, but she had a lot of these African rituals and tend and take me as a child. Very hardworking and very, very insistent on certain kinds of behaviors for her sons and her grandson. I was the first grandson. So I was very influenced by her perception of the world and how the world was created. She had, so at a very early age, I had to leave home, because I was born in a small rural community, and I had to leave home to go to the city, the second city, which is San Fernando in Trinidad. And she instructed me on how I should behave with women. Don't do this, don't do that, and so on and so forth. So these ideas were planted very early in my head about how I should respond to them. It's very conservative. It's very conservative. You know, it's like you don't go and engage with a girl unless you marry the girl. That was the kind of context in which I came from. You know, and don't do certain things. You know, and so on. So I remember very early in my first attempts at trying to go with women, I would hear my grandmother in my head, you know, because she was very well in my head. And therefore, I could not do certain things. Okay. So when I came into the revolutionary movement, these cultural ideas, these ideas that were instilled in my mother by my grandmother, it became real. You know, when I read Mao Zedong, for example, when in the little red book said, "Don't take liberties with women." Well, that was my grandmother speaking before Mao Zedong. Do not pay for everything you take, right? Never take a single piece of needle from a piece of thread or needle from the man. So the revolutionary structure in reading the red book and other revolutionary material, right? It intellectualized some of the things that my grandmother and other women in the community would have taught you know. Right? Now, you had another side of Trinidad, which was not in our household. You had a very loose, like there's a saying in Trinidad, in which women will tell their sons, will say to their other women, "My cock is out," and a cock is like a cockerel, right? You know, lock up your hands. In other words, the idea was that my boy child Roman, so keep your girls. But that was not part of the culture in our home. It was more conservative. And so that kind of conservative approach was instilled in me. And then when I got into reading certain kinds of revolutionary literature, and I saw the morality of it in terms of, you know, I said Mao Zedong and others, right? It shaped my responses to women. Now I'm saying I'm in any way perfect, right? But I came into relationships with a certain amount of respect for women, right? Right? And that is how I responded in most of my relationships with women, right? Now, to return to the question here is about manhood again, which I think is related to the question. The thing I discovered about manhood is that manhood is not a destination, it's a process. In that, as you learn, you evolve. And as you evolve, you apply the lessons of life, right? It is not something static. Now, one of the things I think we sometimes do not understand, and this shapes our relationship with women. There was a book some years ago the guy wrote called Subliminal Seduction, right? It's about the advertising industry. And then one of the things, I don't remember the two guys who wrote about two guys who were in the advertising business. And one of the things they said was that even the colors on a KFC and a McDonald's sends a subliminal message to your mind to make you come into that place to eat, right? They have psychologists who design these colors. So you are thinking it is just the food you're going for, but it's a message that the advertising and the neon sign send to your brain, a subliminal message that shapes your response to this food, which is not a product, it's not food anymore, it's a product. Well, in the same way, what I learned as a teenager, and I'm coming from a position where I live with my grandmother who has certain values. When I went to see the movies, in my opinion, is one of the things that has damaged the relationship between Black men and women. Because the movies in so many ways shaped our responses to women. You remember you go to look some of these movies, like some of these Western movies, and it is always some woman who would betray the star boy and cause him to get into some situation. And you will hear Black men walking out of the movie saying, "Boy, you see how a woman do to that man? A woman get man." And we do. That's why I keep emphasizing this word deconstructing. because we don't understand all the methodologies of capitalism, the entertainment. You are not being entertained, you are being educated about how you should relate to your own people. And there's another book that is written by a guy, I don't know, the book is called The Mouse That Roared. It's about Disney and how Disney is not educating your children. It's not entertaining, they're educating your children in the values and the virtues of capitalism. So again, when we speak about relationships with men and women, it cannot be outside of the context of understanding how capitalism works and the cultural impositions and the subtleties and of that capitalism has imposed on us in terms of our relationships with each other.
Exactly right. Definitely.
Thanks,
No
Brother
tradition.
Akko. It's we have 5 minutes. So it gotta be a speed run to get both of your final thoughts. A question I want to ask is, what guidance would you give single mothers raising Black men children? So if you could squeeze that answer in and your final thoughts, it'll be perfect. Brother Sam and then Brother Akko.
If the single mother has relatives, male relatives, of good standing, I would suggest that, they try to have as much relationship with the son as possible. If that doesn't exist, then it's difficult. I know for some sisters it's going to be real difficult. I would suggest maybe starting by reading certain things, having the child read and have a discussion, but first and foremost, the male relationship that's physical right there is key. And my sense is that one can find some brother somewhere at some point for the child to interact with. And it's work. It may not be automatic if you don't have, like I said, if you don't have a male relative or a close neighbor or something like that. You really got it's very, very important because of what Brother Akko says. Capitalism is educating our children, and that we need a counterforce to that. And the mother can be a very, very powerful counterforce, but what also helps is that you have a conscious brother there especially with the male child helping shape that child, viewpoint on everything.
Brother Akko?
Just to say, I think either for a single male or a single female, one has to understand the society in which they live. A few years ago, I was about to be interviewing a radio station, and the brother who was running the program before me was talking. We had some similar discussions. And he was telling me he and his wife, when they talk, they read books, and he was reading Men Are From Mars, I think, and Women Are From Venus. I think that's the end of it. And he said, they're learning these things and they're trying to teach their son. So I told him, I said, listen, brother, you haven't taught your son the most important thing, in my opinion. And he said, what is that? I said, instincts. You have to teach your children to be instinctive in the context of the reality of the society in which they live. Because as I said to him, this is a society. I was in Atlanta. I said, this is a society that for hundreds of years was dedicated to killing you. And therefore, you must have, just how a dog has instincts that when a dog hears something, raises hairs, or cats or whatever. As humans, we have those qualities, but we don't develop these qualities in order for us to survive. So for any single parent, male or female, to me, you have to raise your child to understand the society in which you live. And that has to develop the instincts and let them understand where danger is. Like one time when I was in New York, I had a sister, I was going on with a sister. We were coming one night late from the movies or somewhere we went. And we were walking along into the subway and we hear this loud noise It was her brother and his friend. We had to tell them, listen, as young black men, 12 o'clock at the night, you can't be this loud. You are going to attract the wrong people. And sometimes we don't train our children to understand, to develop these instincts, to make them understand that you are living in societies that have for centuries dedicated to eradicating and killing you. And I think whether it is a single male or a single female, a key component of raising a child is to develop that child's instinct to survive in a society that is hell-bent on destroying you one way or the other.
Big thanks, Brother Akko. Okay, you both have a minute for your final thoughts. Final thoughts, Brother Sam Anderson.
No, I agree with Brother Akko. You know, the instinct is necessary, very, very, to develop that. It's crucial. We have no alternative, especially here in the belly of the beast. We have no alternative.
Brother Sam, Brother Akko, final thoughts?
The last thing I would say, sister, is that I don't know if I'll have the time, but I'll make it quick. There was a movie I saw one time about a guy who left a village to go to bring riches for his poor family. And along the way, I can't go through the whole thing, but along the way, he fought a number of demonic forces and challenges and so on. And when he went to the mountain where the riches were supposed to be, the riches was actually a mirror. The journey and the riches that he was pursuing was a journey of self-discovery. And when he got to that mountain and he saw the mirror, it was himself he had discovered. And that is a critical component in raising men, women, and children in manhood. It is a journey of self-discovery rooted in cultural frameworks.
Big thanks, Brother Akko, Mutota, Brother Sam Anderson. Rich conversation, loads of wisdom. I'm definitely wrapped up in African, our stories, lived experiences, and uno have one uno centered in who uno as African men are quite proud of uno self, uno accomplishments, uno got false story of human beings, and I accept uno as that, and I really appreciate this. This is a very treasured conversation. It could be used for any group of people, but it's in particular African descendants racialized as Black people. So I want, on behalf of Sunday Review listeners, viewers, streaming online, radio listeners, TV watchers, big thanks to both Brother Sam Anderson. He is an activist, educator, dedicated to the liberation of African people, and Brother Akko Mutota, revolutionary from Trinidad and Tobago, and well-read, own bookstores. Brother Akko got no colonial papers by choice, but he could reason with anybody with colonial papers at any level, and I will bring him both. We want to thank our security guard, Brother Shane Flowers, here at XTV. Our Master Chief Operator is Sister Christy Flowers. Oh, Sister Christy was supposed to show some pictures of Brother Sam and Sister Rosemary and others organizing. Was it yesterday, Brother Sam?
Yes.
Yesterday. Quickly, Brother Sam, before Christy shares those two pictures, what was it that you all were doing yesterday in New York?
Something that should be done in Belize and also in Trinidad, and that is to show Black people's solidarity with the Cuban struggle, saying, let Cuba live, hands off Cuba, end the blockade now, that kind of thing. And we had a demo in Harlem. And so that's, and we're starting there and building upon that.
Oh, okay. Christy was waiting for me to send her the pictures, but it's actually in the chat group, brother. I don't know if you can pull it quickly, Christy, from the Zoom chat group where Brother Sam posted it. In the meantime, while I'm giving Christy a short time to be able to pull those pictures, we want to thank our brother downstairs in Creme Radio as well, Brother Larry Guerrero, known as Larry G, who was the technician today. This show will repeat at 5:30 this evening on XTV, and you could go back and listen, watch the live stream at XTV Belize Facebook page, XTV Belize YouTube. I don't know if Krista will be able to pull those images before we go already past the 12 o'clock mark, but I'll give Christy, and Christy could do magic. I'll give her another minute or so before we'll have to close off today's show. But let's see. It's not allowing her. Sorry about that, Brother Sam. We tried. But
That's
where
all
can
right.
people go on Facebook or YouTube and see the work that was done with the organizing in New York yesterday?
Yes, it would. I think there are a number of sites on search under Blacks for Cuba Coalition, search for Harlem Demo on Cuba, on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, on Blue Sky, all of the social media things that people are posting on all of the social media across the board.
Big thanks, Brother Sam. Hey, I can hail up Sister Rosemary. Big thanks, Brother Akam. I can hurry up, hail up Sister Fanta. These are my soul sisters. These brothers wouldn't be the men they are if it wasn't for these sisters who have stayed by their sides. They're not the front of them, they're back of them, and they're right next to them. These two couples are people that I really admire as conscious African people, and the type of relationship. I hope I find a union like that one day. So until next Sunday, Brother Sam Anderson, Brother Mutota.
Thank you.
No, sir, only organize people and save the people.
Thank you. We'll see you, Brother Sam.
Yes.
No Guatemala, this a GTA, we have it. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Believe me, come from the Billy City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago, agreement by the slave master.